Yeah, so we are saying that company issued a 5-year 10% loan stock specifically for the construction of a new factory in the northern part of the country in order to meet demand from the neighboring countries. Now, last time we talked about the measurement of borrowing costs, but I told you we have two categories of borrowed funds. We have what we call specific borrowed funds, as well as what we call general borrowed funds. Now, we are look specifically for the construction of a new, meaning that the 5-year loan stock is a specific fund. It's a specific fund. Okay, it's a specific borrowed fund. Why? Because this was issued specifically for the construction of a new factory in the northern part of the country. Then the company contracted Africa Contractors Limited on the same day for shillings on this new factory, which is to be constructed. This expenditure is 25 million because the company contracted African Contractors Limited on the same day for shillings 25 billion. So this is how much they are planning to incur on this new factory. But remember, I've told you the 5-year loan stock is a specifically borrowed fund. Okay. The company paid Africa Contractors Limited shillings 10 billion in the first phase of the construction on 1st November 2017 and shillings 15 billion for the second phase of the construction on 1st April 2018 as the final payment. So expenditures were incurred in two different phases of the construction. There is the first phase, which began on 1st November 2017, and the second phase, which commences on 1st April 2018. Of course, there was suspension of work from Jan 2018 for a period of 2 months due to technical disagreements. Between the company and the contractor. That statement is also very, very, very key. Why? Because we need to know if there is suspension of the construction work, should we cease capitalization or we should continue with capitalization? The standard makes it very clear that we cannot cease capitalization during periods when substantial technical and administrative work is being carried out. So here there was a suspension. But of course, we cannot cease capitalization. Balances on the bank accounts of the company and interest at 5% per annum. Remember, not all these funds are going to be used at once. The company can use a portion of these borrowed funds and then the other portion can be invested on what we call temporary investments. Of course, these investments earn interest income, and in this scenario, they're talking about the interest at 5% per annum. The director of finance wants to know the cost of the construction, the loan financing facilities as at 1st July 2017 were as follows. The 5-year loan stock, 10%, that is for 10 billion. Then there's a 10-year 9% loan stock of 10 billion, as well as 18% overdraft facility of 4 billion. Of course, in this case, we have to find out the amount to be capitalized. We have to find out the capitalized interest, and then you can even go ahead and find out the carrying amount of the constructed factory. However, one thing you need to know is that in this scenario, you have two categories of borrowings. We have what we call the specific borrowings as well as the general borrowings. But don't forget that the construction work is expected to cost 25 billions. But out of the 25 billions, we see they already told us that the 5-year 10% loan stock is a specifically borrowed fund. So meaning that out of 25 billion, when I minus how much? When we minus the 5-year 10% loan stock, you'll see that the balance is from the general funds. I repeat, we need 25 billion, but this 25 billion is from a combination of different funds. We have the specific funds, that is the 5-year 10% loan stock of 14 billions. But of course, that is a specific fund, okay? To construct the factory, because the 5-year 10% loan stock is not enough. That is just 14 billion. That amount of money is not enough. Okay. So these expenditures, the 25 billions, we have to allocate them. But they are first allocated to what we call the specific borrowings, and then later to the general borrowings. Let's see how we can build our answer in this case. In case you have a question, please, you can ask. This is not for this note is about borrowing costs. Of course, we know very well that the expenditures, also you can say that the amounts The amount to be capitalized is the borrowing costs that could have been avoided. That could have been avoided if the expenditure on the qualifying asset had not been made. Had not been made. We can say that in this case, the construction of the factory is financed by both specific and general. It's financed by both specific and general funds. It's financed by both specific and general funds. But don't forget that when we look at the information given, we know that the construction of this factory costs shillings 25 billions. But of course, this 25 billions comes from a pool of specific and general funds. So when we look at the expenditures, the 25 billion that was incurred, we have to first allocate it to specific borrowings. In other words, we have to find out of the 25 billion that is incurred, how much is from specific funds and how much is from the general borrowings. We are going to find out that. I'll say that expenditures incurred in obtaining a qualifying asset. Remember, this factory is a qualifying asset. In obtaining a qualifying asset, are first allocated any specific borrowings. And of course, the remaining expenditures are allocated to any general borrowings. So we see we have 25 billions incurred, but out of the 25, how much comes from specific borrowings? If I'm asked, Milka and Winnie and the others, we're incurring 25 billions on the construction of this factory, but how much comes from the specific funds and how much comes from the general funds?
I think if we go back to the question, 14 comes from specific borrowing. And then the balance comes from general funds.
And then the balance comes from the general funds. How much is the balance?
11
billions. Members, we are saying that we are incurring 25 billions on the construction of this factory, but out of the 25 billions, 14 billions are from specific funds, and of course, 11 billions are from the other general borrowings. Okay, we can analyze our expenditures, analysis of expenditures. Analysis of expenditures. Of expenditure and then the amount. Amount allocated. The general borrowings. Amount allocated to the general borrowings.
Hello, Annington. Sorry, I'm late. Which number are we to?
Check May 2019. The question we did last time, we were not for, I think, not for.
Oh, okay.
Is it question, which question was that? Question 2, question 3? Was it question 2 or question 3? So the first expenditure was made when? When was the first expenditure, members? Melka, when was the first expenditure?
Actually, don't have the question. You could share in the group.
So the first expenditure was incurred on 1st November 2017. First November 2017. And how much was incurred on that date? How much was incurred on that date? Of course, 10 billions were incurred. I've shared the question in the WhatsApp group. 10 billions were incurred. $10 billions were incurred on this date. $10 billions were incurred. Now, is this 10 billion from general funds or from a specific borrowing? If you had first allocate the expenditures to any specific borrowing, is the 10 billion to be allocated to the specific borrowings or to the general borrowings?
Specific.
To specific. Mean that this 10 billion is not allocated to any general borrowing. So I'll just put a dash. Then we incurred on 1st April 2018. We incurred how much? 15 billion. Remember, the expenditures were incurred in 2 phases. Phase 1 and phase what? And phase 2. Now, in phase 2, we incur 15 billions. To make it a total of how much? To make it a total of 25 billions. Now, this 15 billion, is it specific borrowing or general funds? If you have to allocate it.
I think we will take the 4 from specific. Then the 11 come from the general borrowing.
The 11 out of the 15 are to be allocated to the general borrowings. Are to be allocated to the general borrowings. So we allocate the 11 millions to the general borrowings. Remember, the specific funds amounted to 14 billion, but we need 25 billion to construct this factory. So mean that out of 25 billions, 14 billion are specific funds, and the 11 billion is the amount that is to be allocated to the general borrowings, as we can see. Okay. So we now know that 14 is specific, and then 11 billion is what? 11 billion is what? 11 billion is general. 11 billion is general. All right. Of course, now we can say that because now we have specific and and borrowed and general funds. So we can say that for the case of the specific funds, i.e., is that the 10%? 10%, 5%. In case of the specific funds, that is 5-year 10%. 5-year 10% loan stock. i.e. 5-year 10% loan stock. For the case of specific funds, i.e. 5-year 10% loan stock, the amount of borrowing costs for capitalization the standard says that it is the actual cost It's the actual cost incurred during the period less income earned on temporary, less the income earned, less income earned on temporary investments. Of those borrowings. Income earned on temporary investments of those borrowings. Okay. Now let us get the actual costs incurred, the borrowing costs. Remember, borrowing costs are according to the standard. It is interest and other costs that an entity incurs in connection with the borrowing of what? In connection with the borrowing of funds. So you are going to calculate the interest, which is the borrowing cost on these specific funds. And calculate this, we say borrowing costs, which is 10%. Times how much, members? Milka, times how much? 10% of how much?
14.
10% of 14 billions. Just put 14 M. So that's how much? What is 10% of 14 billions?
1.4 billion.
That is 1.4 billion. All right. Now we have to less, because after that is the actual cost incurred during the period less the income earned on the temporary investment of those borrowings. So we have 14 billions, that is specific funds, but these specific funds were not incurred all at the same time. They're incurring this amount in phases, and we see that they first incurred how much? Rachel, how much was first incurred on the construction of this qualifying asset?
It was 10 billion.
They first incurred the 10 billion. What does that mean? If we incur the 10 billions, it means that the other portion is going to be invested. Okay? The other portion will be what? The other portion will be invested. the other portion will be invested. But now we need to look at when was the money obtained and when did they start incurring the expenditures? When was the money obtained and when did the construction began? The construction began when? And when did they get these funds? Construction started when, members?
It began on October 2017.
Are you sure it's October? Okay. October 2017. All right. Yes.
But they received the funds on 1st November.
However, due to the delay in approving the plan by the authorities, the construction started in October 2017. The company paid Africa Constructors 10 billion in the first phase of the construction on 1st November 2017. So initially, these funds were invested. Okay. Before the construction began, these funds were invested. They were invested for how long? They were invested for how long? Because construction began in October. So when did the construction, the funds were invested for how long?
3 months.
Of course, these funds were invested for the past 3 months before the construction work started. Okay, so I'll say less investment income.
Huntington.
Yes, please.
Since the question didn't tell us the money was invested, we just assume it was invested for the first 3 months.
Of course, when you look at the question, they are telling you that balances of the bank accounts of the company earn interest at 5% per annum. Meaning that if you have some idle funds on your bank account, they will be earning interest. Is it okay?
All right.
Yeah. So we say less investment income. Less investment income. Of course, we see the 14 billions times what? What is the interest rate? Times a 5%. Then times 3 out of what?
12.
Times 3 out of 12. That gives us how much?
$19.4444 million.
How would you get that? Because it's 14 billions times 5%, then times 3 over 12.
Time was 14 billion.
It's 175.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
That's what 175. So now we started the construction, and of course we paid the construction company, the contractors, we paid them 10 billions. That is on 1st April. They paid that amount on 1st November 2007. Okay. Now we see another expenditure being made when? The other expenditure was incurred when?
1st April.
1st April 2014. 2018, yeah, 2018. Now when we pay 10 billions on 1st November 2017. We have a 4 billion. Okay? Because the specific funds are 14 billions. We are paying 10. So we have some idle funds of how much? Of 4 billions on our bank account. And we know very well that if we have some money on the bank account, it will earn an interest of 5%. So meaning that the 4 billion has to be also subject to the 5% for a given number of months for that period when that money was not used on the construction of the asset. Okay, so we have a 4 billion times 5 times a 5%. Times 5%. Times how many months?
5.
Times 5 months. That is from November 1st to 1st April. Okay. So this is 5/12. So how much is that investment income?
$83. Then 333.33. 6 times.
Okay, plus the 3 zeros up. This is how much we have as our investment income on the 4 billions. So now to get the amount of borrowing cost to be capitalized, we are getting our 1.4 minus the investment income. Minus the investment income. So how much do we get as the amount to be capitalized on the specific borrowed funds?
I think 1.141.
That's how much?
I have 1.141.
You have 1.
$66667. Yeah,
that 1411667. That's the amount of borrowing costs to be capitalized on the specific key, on the specific borrowings. The specific key borrowings. Now, of course, we have the general borrowings. I don't know if there is anyone with a question before we move to the general borrowings. Stella, Winnie, Macklin, before we move to the general borrowings, any question on the specific borrowings so far? Any question on the specific borrowings? Okay, let's look at the general borrowings. Okay. Let's look at the general borrowings. So you can see that for the funds borrowed generally, we know that the amount of borrowing costs to be capitalized should be determined by applying the weighted average costs, of the borrowing costs to the expenditure on the assets. The expenditure on the assets. So we have to, telling us that for the funds borrowed generally, the amount of borrowing costs to be capitalized should be determined by applying the weighted average of the borrowing costs to the expenditure on that asset. So we have to come up with what we call the weighted capitalization rate. Okay, we have to come up with the weighted average capitalization rate. Remember, we have a pool of debts. We have a pool of debts other than the specific debt. So we have to come up with the weighted average capitalization rate. Okay. So we can say the weighted, let's compute that from here. So the capitalization rate for the general debts. Capitalization rate for the general pool of debt. Milka, our pool of debt consists of what and what? When you try to look at the information given. It consists of which loan financing facilities?
10-year, 9% loan stock.
Yes.
Then an overdraft of 18% facility.
Yeah, because the 5-year 10% loan stock is specific, okay? Yeah. So in this case, what we do, of course, we get the 10-year 9% non-stocks. I'll get 9%. 9% times how much? That is times 10 billions. So that is the interest on that 10-year 9% long stock. The interest is 9% of 10 billion. Then plus the interest on the other debt, which is
18% of 4 billion.
Of 4 billion. That is interest. So we get that total interest on the general debts, then over the total, which is 10 plus 4 billions, which is 14. Is 14 billions. Then times 100%. So what's that rate? Please compute the rate very fast. Can we get the rate? Can we get the rate? How much is the capitalization rate for the general pool of debts members? Try to compute and we see what we have as our capitalization rate.
I have 11.57, so we can take 12.
Let's take 11 point what?
57.
11.57%. So that is our capitalization rate for the general pool of debts. That's our capitalization rate for the general pool of what? For the general pool of debts. Now let us get the borrowing costs to be capitalized on the general borrowings. Okay. Borrowing cost to be capitalized in brackets. General borrowings. So we look at the expenditure that was incurred, which relates to the general borrowings. How much was that expenditure incurred attributed to the general borrowings?
We had 11 billion.
So that's 11 billions. Times what percentage?
11.57.
Times 11.57%. But we have to look at the period. When was this 11 billion incurred? Because we have to weight this for the period out to outstanding up to the date of completion of the qualifying asset, or up to the end of the financial, year. When are they closing the financial year? When is the financial year end? Debt.
I think it ends on
company's 30th June 2018. So this amount was outstanding for a period of how many months to the reporting date?
We are from April.
So that's a period of how many months?
3.
That's a period of 3 months. So I'll say times 3 out of 12. So that gives you how much? How much are the borrowing costs to be capitalized in respect of general borrowings?
I have 318.
You have 318.
175.
318. 175.
The 3 zeros are up.
The 3 zeros, of course, are okay. We can just add them. Okay. This is in shillings, thousands. So now we have our borrowing costs to be capitalized on the general borrowings as well as on the specific ones, as well as on the specific funds. And the standard says that the standard requires entities to capitalize those borrowing costs that are directly attributable to the acquisition or construction of the qualifying asset as part of the cost of that asset. So meaning that we have to add these borrowing costs to be capitalized on the general borrowings. We add this to the borrowing costs to be capitalized on the specific borrowings to come up with the total interest that is to be capitalized as part of the cost of the asset. So you can say that the name of the company, talk about that. We show how much they should capitalize. So you can say that KKT shall capitalize borrowing costs that are directly attributable to the acquisition or construction. Let's just talk about construction because they are constructing a factory that are directly attributable to the construction of the new factory as part of the cost of the assets. As part of the cost of the factory, part of the cost of the factory. Therefore, the borrowing costs to be capitalized are shillings. How much? How much are the borrowing costs to be capitalized in this case? How much are the borrowing costs to be capitalized? Maclean, how much are the borrowing costs to be capitalized? To be capitalized as shillings.
I think we add the 2.
Yes.
So we'll have 1,459.
1,459.
842.
842,000. And to get this, we are getting
Plus
we are getting the 1,41667,000 plus 318. So those are borrowing costs to be capitalized. In other words, that's the cost that will be added to the initial cost of the factory to come up with the carrying amount in the statement of financial position. So that's how much we have. That's the amount to be capitalized. Of course, any other borrowing cost that is not capitalized, that borrowing cost will be recognized as an expense in the period in which it is incurred. Of course, you can also find out that the borrowing cost to be expensed, I can say that KKT Limited, shall recognize other borrowing costs as an expense. An expense in the period in which it incurs them. Okay? In which it incurs them. And so that the expense, okay. And so the interest expense to be recognized in the statement of profit or loss for the year ended when? When is the company's financial year end? That is 30th June 2018, or ended 30th June 2018. The interest expense to be recognized in the statement of profit or loss for the 30th June 2018 is shillings. We are going to find out that in brackets and say note. Let's see how we can arrive at the interest to be expensed. So this is your note. So Rachel, how can we come up with the interest expense to appear in profit and loss?
I don't know.
You don't know, but let's compute. The first thing which we have to do is to get the total interest on all the loans. Total interest, okay, on all the loans. These loans were available at the start of the financial, that is 1st July 2017. So we're going to get total interest on the specific loan, which is 10% times how much? Times 14 billions. Then we add how much? We add 9%. 9% of how much? 10 billions. Nine percent of 10 billions. Then we also add how much? 18% of how much?
4 billion.
So that gives you how much as your total interest on all the borrowed funds? How much is the interest? Rachel, how much is the interest? How much is the interest? Milka, how much is the interest?
It is 3,020,000.
That is 3 billions. So that is our interest on all the loan facilities. But of course, we know very well that part of this interest, there is a part which is capitalized. So I'll say less capitalized interest. Less capitalized interest. How much is our capitalized interest?
It is 1.459842 billion.
1.1459 1.4 598 what?
842, then 000.
842. Then there is also interest income, which has also to be deducted. Interest income, because some funds were invested, and of course, the company earned the interest income. So this will reduce the expense. How much is your interest income? Our interest income is how much? We have that already on the specific key funds. That's the total, that's the total amount. That is
833.
175,000 plus
Then plus
83,333, which gives you how much?
25,833.
Which gives us 258,33. Of course, now we come up with the interest expense. Interest expense, which will be taken to the statement of profit or loss as how much? Can we find out the interest expense?
One 30.
One what?
1301.
1301, yes.
825,000. 825,000.
Rachel also confirmed that.
Yes, it is true.
So that's how much we have as our interest expense to be taken to the statement of profit or loss as the expense for that financial year. So the interest expense to be recognized in the statement of profit or loss for the end of 30th June 2018 is shillings 130,182,500. Of course, you can also talk about the amount that will appear in the statement of financial position in respect of this new factoring. Of course, we have the cost that was incurred, that is the 25 billions, but of course you also have to add the borrowing costs capitalized, okay? You can say that the factoring, the new factoring, the factory. shall be presented. The factory should be presented. In the statement of financial position. Should be presented. The statement of financial position as at 30th June 2018. At its carrying amount of shillings, how much? How much do you think is the value of this factory by the end of the year? How much is the value of the factory by the end of the year?
$26,459,842.
Plus 1,459,842. It's how much?
It is 26,459,842. Then 000.
26 what?
459,842. 000.
It's 26,459,8842. Yeah, the factory should be presented this. Yes, please. 842. The factory should be presented in the statement of position as that date at its current amount of shillings. That is getting the initial cost of the 25 billion that was incurred, plus the amount of borrowing costs to be capitalized. So that is our. Yes, please.
Huntington,
Yes, please.
do we depreciate it or we just leave?
Of course, you depreciate if the depreciation rate was given, but we don't have the depreciation rate. So we cannot depreciate in this case. Okay. Any other question? Those with questions, please, you can ask Winnie. In case you have a question, you can ask Stella, Maclean, and then Rachel. In case you have questions, please, you can ask your questions.